If you own an older American home, there's a good chance your plumbing is quietly costing you hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars every single year, and you don't even know it. I've spent decades working on homes built in the 1920s through the 1970s, and I can tell you the same six mistakes show up over and over again. These aren't exotic problems. They're simple things that homeowners either don't notice or have just learned to live with. In this video, I'm going to walk you through all six, show you exactly what to look for, and tell you how to fix each one. Plus, stick around to the end because I've got a bonus tip, a simple 15-minute walkthrough you can do once a year that could save you from a catastrophic plumbing failure. Let's get into it. Older homes have real character, and I love them for that. But they also have plumbing systems that were designed for a different era, with different materials, different codes, and different expectations for how long things should last. The good news is, once you know what to look for, most of these problems are completely fixable, and many of them you can handle yourself. So let's start with the biggest one. The first mistake, and honestly the most expensive one I see, is ignoring outdated supply pipes. If your home was built before 1960, there's a strong chance you have galvanized steel pipes running your water supply. Here's how to tell. Go down to your basement or crawl space and look at the pipes coming off your main water line. If they're a dull gray color, and when you tap them with a screwdriver, they sound metallic and kind of dead, not like a bell ringing, that's galvanized steel. You might also see areas where the pipe looks crusty or has little orange rust spots forming on the outside. Sometimes you'll notice a threaded fitting where two pipes join, and that joint will have a buildup of white or greenish mineral crust around it. Here's why this is such a big deal. Galvanized pipes corrode from the inside out. Over 30 or 40 years, mineral deposits and rust slowly choke the inside diameter of the pipe. A 3/4-inch pipe that used to flow beautifully might now have an effective opening the size of a pencil. That's why your water pressure has been getting weaker year after year. But the real danger is when those pipes finally spring a leak inside a wall or under the floor. I've seen galvanized pipe failures cause $10,000 or more in water damage in a single afternoon. One homeowner I worked with had a pipe burst behind the kitchen wall while she was at work. By the time she got home 6 hours later, the entire first floor had standing water. The remediation bill alone was over $12,000, and that was before any plumbing repairs. Now, if your home was built in the late 1970s through the mid-1990s, you might have a different problem altogether. Look for a gray or white flexible plastic pipe with crimp rings at the fittings. That could be polybutylene, and it's notorious for failing at the connections without any warning. Millions of homes were plumbed with it before it was essentially pulled off the market due to class action lawsuits. And if your home is really old, say pre-1940, you might even have lead supply lines, especially the short section running from the street to your house. Lead pipes are a dull gray, and they're soft. You can actually scratch them with a house key and see shiny silver metal underneath. If you find LED, don't panic, but do get your water tested right away and start planning for a replacement. For any of these outdated pipe materials, the long-term fix is repiping with either copper or PEX, which is a flexible cross-linked polyethylene tubing. PEX is spelled P-E-X, and it rhymes with flex. A whole house repipe with PEX typically runs between $4,000 and $8,000, depending on the size of your home, which sounds like a lot until you compare it to the cost of a catastrophic water damage event. If a full repipe isn't in the budget right now, at least have a plumber do an inspection and identify the most vulnerable sections so you can prioritize the worst areas first. The second mistake I see constantly is neglecting slow drains until they become complete blockages. In older homes, slow drains aren't just annoying. They're warning signs of something much more serious happening underground. Most homes built before 1970 used cast iron for their drain, waste, and vent piping. Cast iron is incredibly durable stuff, but after 50 or 60 years, the inside walls start to scale and flake. That rough interior surface catches everything that flows past: grease, hair, soap residue, food particles, and it builds up much faster than it would in smooth PVC pipe. Then there's root intrusion. If you've got mature trees anywhere near your sewer line, their roots are actively seeking out the moisture around your pipe joints. Roots can work their way into even the tiniest hairline crack. And once they're inside, they create a net that catches everything flowing past. I've pulled root masses out of sewer lines that look like tumbleweeds, just completely filling the pipe. Here's what I want you to do if you've got chronically slow drains. First, stop pouring chemical drain cleaners down there. They're a temporary fix at best, and in cast iron pipes, the caustic chemicals can actually accelerate corrosion and make the problem worse over time. Instead, invest in having your main sewer line camera inspected. Most plumbing companies will run a camera through your main line for between $150 and $300, and it tells you exactly what's going on underground. You'll find out if you've got root intrusion, a bellied pipe where the line has sagged and created a low spot that collects waste, or if your cast iron is deteriorating from the inside. Once you know the actual problem, you can make a smart decision about whether you need spot repairs, a pipe liner, or a full sewer line replacement. Spending $200 on a camera inspection today can save you from a $15,000 emergency dig-up next winter. By the way, if you're finding this advice helpful, you should know it's just a small sample of what I've put into my new book, 100 Old House Fixes That Save You Thousands. It's packed with practical old house fixes that can help you avoid expensive repair bills. To grab your copy, you can scan the QR code on the screen right now, or just use the first link in the description below. All right, let's continue. The third mistake is one that drives me a little crazy because it's so easy and inexpensive to fix. I'm talking about running toilets and dripping faucets that you've just learned to live with. I can't tell you how many homes I've walked into where the homeowner says, "Oh yeah, that toilet's been running for a couple of years now. You just have to jiggle the handle. Here's what that jiggling is costing you." A toilet with a bad flapper can waste up to 200 gallons of water per day. At average water rates across most of the country, that adds up to over $1,000 a year from just one toilet. Here's the fix, and it takes about 15 minutes. Lift the lid off your toilet tank and flush it. Watch what happens. If water keeps flowing into the bowl after the tank is filled back up, your flapper is the problem. That's the rubber piece sitting at the bottom of the tank that seals the flush valve opening. Turn off the water supply at the wall using that little oval handle behind the toilet near the floor. Flush to empty the tank. Unhook the old flapper from the 2 plastic ears on the overflow tube and take it to the hardware store so you can match the size exactly. A replacement flapper costs about $4 to $7. Snap the new one in place, hook the chain back up with about 1/2 inch of slack, turn the water back on, and you're done. If the toilet keeps running and it's not the flapper, the fill valve might be the culprit. You'll see water continuously trickling into the overflow tube and never stopping. A universal fill valve replacement kit runs about $8 to $12, and there are clear instructions printed right inside the box. I've replaced hundreds of these over the years, and it never takes me more than 20 minutes. Dripping faucets are the same story. A faucet dripping once per second wastes over 3,000 gallons a year. Most of the time, the fix is a worn cartridge or a deteriorated O-ring inside the handle. For a single-handle faucet, you can usually pull the cartridge out and bring it to the hardware store for an exact match. The repair kit is typically under $15 and comes with everything you need. Now, mistake number 4 is the one I call the ticking time bomb, and that's completely ignoring your water heater. If you have a tank-style water heater, which most older homes do, and you've never flushed it or checked the anode rod, you are on borrowed time. Here's what's happening inside that tank right now. Sediment from your water supply, especially if you have hard water, settles at the bottom of the tank every single day. Over the years, that layer of sediment gets thick enough to insulate the bottom of the tank from the burner flame underneath. Your water heater has to work harder and run longer to heat your water, which drives up your gas or electric bill significantly. But worse than the energy waste, the trapped sediment holds heat against the steel bottom of the tank, which accelerates corrosion from the inside. That's how tanks fail. They rust through from the bottom out, and when they go, you get 40 or 50 gallons of water dumping onto your floor all at once. Here's what you should be doing every single year. First, flush the sediment. Turn off the gas or electricity to the heater. Connect the standard garden hose to the drain valve at the bottom of the tank and run it to a floor drain or outside. Open the valve and let water flow until it runs clear. This usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes. The first time you do this, you'll be amazed at the amount of gritty, rusty-looking water that comes pouring out. That's all the sediment that's been cooking at the bottom of your tank. Second, check your anode rod. This is a long metal rod that screws into the top of the tank, and its entire purpose is to corrode so your tank doesn't have to. On most water heaters, you can access it with a 1 1/16 inch socket on a breaker bar. Pull it out and take a good look. If it's less than 1/2 inch thick, or if it's coated in calcium deposits and looks like a skeleton, it's time for a new one. A replacement anode rod costs between $20 and $50 and can add 5 or more years of life to your water heater. That's an incredible return on investment. Third, test the temperature and pressure relief valve. That's the brass valve on the side or top of the tank with a little lever and a discharge pipe running down toward the floor. Lift the lever gently and let it snap back. You should hear water release into that discharge pipe. If nothing comes out, or if the valve drips continuously after you test it, replace it immediately. This valve is a critical safety device that prevents your water heater from building up dangerous pressure, so please don't skip this step. The fifth mistake is not knowing where your main water shutoff valve is, or worse, having one that doesn't actually work when you need it most. In an emergency like a burst pipe or a failed washing machine hose, every single second counts. If you can't get the water shut off fast, you're looking at massive structural damage. In most older homes, the main shutoff is in the basement near where the water line enters the house from the street side. Look for either a round wheel-style handle, which is called a gate valve, or a lever handle, which is a ball valve. Here's the problem with older homes. Gate valves are notorious for seizing up after years of never being turned. The internal gate corrodes in the open position, and when you finally try to close it during a flood, it either won't budge or the gate breaks apart inside the valve body and actually blocks the pipe. I've seen it happen more times than I can count, where a homeowner tries to force a seized gate valve during an emergency and makes everything worse. What I recommend is simple. Go find your main shutoff valve right now, today, after this video. Try turning it. If it's a gate valve and it turns smoothly, great. But consider having a plumber replace it with a quarter-turn ball valve the next time they're at your house for anything. Ball valves are reliable, fast, and they almost never seize. If your gate valve is currently stuck and won't budge, do not force it. Call a plumber and get it replaced before an emergency forces the issue. A ball valve replacement typically costs between $150 and $300 installed, and honestly, it's one of the smartest investments you can make in an older home. The sixth and final mistake is something I find in almost every older home that's been through multiple owners, and that's previous DIY repairs done with the wrong materials or in violation of basic plumbing code. I've opened up walls and found galvanized steel connected directly to copper fittings with no dielectric union between them, which creates galvanic corrosion that eats right through the connection and in just a few years. I've found drain lines with no P-trap whatsoever, vent pipes that terminate inside the attic instead of going through the roof, and supply lines held together with automotive hose clamps and duct tape. I genuinely wish I was making that up. If you've bought an older home, especially one that's had several owners over the decades, take the time to do a careful visual audit of every piece of exposed plumbing you can access. Walk through the basement with a flashlight, check under every sink, look behind the washing machine, inspect the utility room. If you see different metals joined together without a proper transition fitting, rubber couplings where there should be permanent connections, or drain lines that don't seem to connect to any vent stack, write it all down and get a licensed plumber to evaluate what you found. These hidden code violations are often the true source of mysterious leaks, persistent sewer gas smells, and slow drains that no amount of chemical cleaner will ever fix. Now let's talk about some warning signs that tell you something is going wrong before it turns into a full-blown disaster. If you notice your water bill creeping up month after month for no obvious reason, that's very often a hidden leak somewhere in the system, maybe a running toilet in a guest bathroom you rarely use, or a supply line weeping inside a wall cavity. Discolored water is another major red flag. A brownish or yellowish tint when you first turn on a faucet in the morning points directly to corroding pipes losing material into your water supply. If you smell something musty or damp under a sink or in a particular corner of the basement, that could mean a slow leak is feeding mold growth behind a wall or under the floor. Fluctuating water pressure is worth paying attention to as well. If the pressure feels strong one moment and weak the next, especially when nobody else in the house is running water, you might have a partially blocked galvanized pipe or a failing pressure reducing valve. Water stains on ceilings, particularly on the first floor directly below an upstairs bathroom, should never ever be painted over and ignored. And if you notice a spot in your yard or along your foundation that stays damp even during dry weather, that could indicate a leaking water main or sewer line underground. Every one of these signs warrants prompt investigation, because the sooner you catch these problems, the cheaper and simpler they are to resolve. Now, for that bonus tip I promised you at the very beginning. Once a year, I want you to set aside just 15 minutes and do a complete plumbing walkthrough of your home. Start at the water heater. Check around the base for any moisture, rust stains, or dripping at the supply fittings and the relief valve discharge pipe. Then visit every sink in the house, open the cabinet doors, and get down there with a flashlight. You're looking for any drips, moisture, greenish corrosion on copper supply lines, or water staining on the cabinet floor. Check every toilet by dropping 5 or 6 drops of food coloring into the tank water and waiting 10 minutes without flushing. If that color shows up in the bowl, your flapper is silently leaking and needs to be replaced. Head to the basement and walk the entire length of every visible supply line and drain pipe. Look for green corrosion on copper joints, white mineral crusting around threaded connections, fresh rust on steel pipes, or any new water stains on the concrete below. Finally, step outside and check your hose bibs and any exposed exterior piping for drips, cracks, or freeze damage. Wiggle each hose bib gently to make sure it's still solidly attached to the house. This entire walkthrough takes 15 minutes or less. It doesn't cost you a single dollar, and it catches the vast majority of plumbing problems while they're still small and cheap to fix rather than after they've turned into emergencies. Before you go, I want to make sure you know about my new book, 100 Old House Fixes That Save You Thousands. It goes deeper than we can in a single video, with practical fixes, warning signs, and simple steps for older homes. If you want to avoid expensive repair bills before you call a plumber, this book is for you. Just scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to get your copy. Thanks for watching. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Take care of that old house, and it'll take care of you right back. I'll see you in the next video.